saloon reeked of sweat, tobacco, and cheap whiskey. Smoke hung thick in the air like morning fog over the plains, and the piano in the corner played a tuneless melody that nobody listened to. Eli McKenna sat at the corner table, his weathered hand steady as he dealt another round of cards to the 4 men gathered around the scarred oak surface. He'd already won more than most men saw in a year. $300, a prize stallion, and the deed to a patch of land near the river. But Eli wasn't here for the money. He never was. The game was what mattered. The cold calculation, the reading of men's faces, the power of knowing when to hold and when to push. "I'm out," muttered Jake Morrison, throwing his cards down. The rancher pushed back from the table, his chair scraping against the floorboards. That left 3. Eli, a traveling merchant named Hobbs, and Samuel Garrett, a drunk who'd been losing steadily all night. Garrett's bloodshot eyes darted between his cards and the pile of money in the center of the table. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool October air seeping through the saloon's warped boards. "Well, gentlemen?" Eli's voice was low, controlled. He'd perfected that voice over years of dealing with cattle buyers and railroad men. It gave nothing away. Hobbs folded. Garrett's hands trembled as he reached for his whiskey glass, found it empty, and set it down with a clatter. I ain't got nothing left to bet." Garrett slurred. "Then you're done." Eli began to reach for the pot. "Wait!" Garrett's hand shot out. Grabbing Eli's wrist, the saloon seemed to pause, conversations dying, heads turning. Nobody touched Eli McKenna without invitation. Eli's gray eyes, cold as winter steel, fixed on Garrett's hand. Slowly, the drunk released his grip. "I got something," Garrett insisted. "Something worth more than all that money." "Unless you've got another horse hidden somewhere?" "My wife." The words fell into the silence like stones into still water. The piano player's hands stilled on the keys. Even the bartender stopped polishing glasses. Eli leaned back in his chair, studying Garrett with the same detached interest he might show a cow at auction. "Your wife? She's prime goods," Garrett continued, the words tumbling out faster now. "Young still, can cook clean, knows her place, worth at least—" "Shut your mouth, Sam!" The voice came from near the bar, a woman's voice, low and fierce despite its quietness. For the first time since the game started, Eli looked away from the table. She stood by the bar in a faded calico dress that had seen too many washings, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wasn't beautiful in the conventional sense. Her face was too angular, her mouth too wide. But there was something in the way she held herself, spine straight despite the weight of every eye in the room. That made Eli look twice. "Nora, get back to the wagon." Garrett snarled. She didn't move. Her eyes, green as sage in the desert, met Eli's across the smoky room. He saw no pleading there, no tears, just a weary defiance, as if she'd already endured the worst life could offer and found herself still standing. "The bet stands," Garrett declared, turning back to Eli. "My wife against everything in that pot." Eli should have walked away. He'd won enough. He didn't need complications. And women were always complications. His ranch ran smooth as clockwork, precisely because he kept it free of such distractions. But something, maybe it was the whiskey, maybe it was the challenge in those green eyes, made him stay seated. "You can't bet what ain't yours to lose," he said. Garrett laughed, an ugly sound. "She's mine by law, bought and paid for 5 years ago. I got the papers." The woman, Nora, flinched almost imperceptibly. Eli caught it, filed it away with all the other tells he'd learned to read. "Show your cards," Eli said. Garrett's face split in a grin as he laid down his hand. "Full house, aces over eights. A good hand. A winning hand. Most nights." Eli set his cards down one by one. 4 queens. The color drained from Garrett's face. Nora closed her eyes briefly, then opened them, her expression unchanged. "No," Garrett breathed. "No, you cheated. You must have—" Eli's hand moved to the Colt at his hip, not drawing, just resting there. "Care to repeat that?" Garrett's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. Around them, men shifted away, not wanting to catch a stray bullet if things went bad. "Take your money," Garrett tried. "Take it all. Just, you made a bet." Eli's voice was stone. "In front of witnesses. You backing out now?" The saloon waited. These were the moments that defined a man in the territories. The moments when law was what you could enforce and honor was all that separated civilization from chaos. Garrett's shoulders slumped. He looked at Nora, and for a moment, Eli thought he saw something like regret in the drunk's eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by bitter resignation. "She's yours, then." He stood unsteadily, not looking at his wife. "Papers are in the wagon." He stumbled toward the door. Nora remained by the bar, still as a statue. The saloon began to buzz with conversation again, men turning back to their drinks and games, the spectacle over. Eli gathered his winnings methodically, stacking bills and coins into neat piles. He was aware of her standing there, aware of the weight of what had just happened settling over the room like dust after a stampede. When he finally looked up, she had moved closer, standing now at the edge of the table. Up close, he could see the fine lines around her eyes, the calluses on her hands. This was no pampered town woman. She'd known work, known hardship. "I suppose you'll want to inspect your winnings," she said. Her voice was steady, but he caught the slight tremor underneath, like a wire stretched too tight. "I want to get out of here," Eli replied. He stood, pocketing his money. "You got belongings?" "In the wagon." He nodded toward the door. "Get them." She hesitated. "Just like that? You don't want to—" She gestured vaguely at herself. "Want to what?" He knew what she meant, but something perverse in him wanted to make her say it. Color rose in her cheeks, but her gaze didn't waver. "Make sure you got your money's worth." "Lady, I just won $400 in change. You were just part of the pot." The words came out harsher than he'd intended, and he saw her flinch. "Get your things. It's a long ride to my place." She turned without another word and walked out, her back rigid with pride or anger or both. Eli watched her go, then drained the last of his whiskey. What the hell had he just done? Outside, the October night was crisp, stars scattered across the sky like spilled salt. His ranch was 15 miles north, a hard ride in the dark, but he wanted distance between himself and Cedar Falls, between himself and the weight of the decision he'd just made. Nora emerged from behind the saloon with a single carpet bag and a worn shawl around her shoulders. In the moonlight, she looked younger, more vulnerable, but when she met his eyes, that defiance was still there, banking like coals that refused to die. "That all you got?" he asked. "It's all that's mine." He mounted his horse, a big roan gelding built for endurance, and looked down at her. For a moment, he considered offering her a hand up, riding double, but something in her stance told him she'd refuse. "There's a mare tied at the post. She's gentle enough." Nora moved to the indicated horse, checking the cinch with practiced movements before mounting. She sat the saddle well. He noted. Whatever else she was, she could ride. They left Cedar Falls behind, following the wagon road north into the vast darkness of the plains. The only sounds were the creak of leather, the steady beat of hooves on hard-packed earth, and the distant howl of coyotes. Neither spoke. Eli found himself glancing back periodically, checking that she was still there, that this wasn't some whiskey dream. Each time, he found her riding steadily behind him, back straight, face unreadable in the darkness. What was he going to do with her? He'd acted on impulse, on anger at a man who would stake his wife like a piece of horseflesh. But now he was stuck with the consequences. His orderly life, his carefully maintained solitude, had just been shattered by a hand of cards. The moon was high when they finally saw the lights of his ranch, just a few lanterns burning in the windows of the main house and bunkhouse. The Double M spread was one of the largest in the county, built through years of careful deals and harder work. It was his kingdom, his refuge from the complications of the world. And now he was bringing those complications right through the front gate. the morning after Eli left. Nora woke to silence, not the comfortable quiet of dawn, but the hollow emptiness of abandonment. She'd heard his horse leave in the dark hours before sunrise, the hoofbeats fading into the distance like the last words of a conversation she'd never had. She rose from the narrow bed in the small house by the stables, her body stiff from the unfamiliar mattress. Through the single window, she could see the main house standing empty against the pale sky, its windows dark as closed eyes. 3 days. That's how long she waited, expecting his return at any moment. 3 days of exploring her strange new prison, of trying to understand the man who'd won her in a card game only to disappear like smoke. The ranch hands kept their distance, eyeing her with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. The foreman, a grizzled man named Tom Wheeler, had shown her around that first morning after Eli left. "Kitchen's there," he'd said, pointing to the main house. "You're welcome to use it, but most of us eat at the cookhouse with Chen Li. He's the cook. Does the washing too, if you need it." "Where did Mr. McKenna go?" she'd asked. Tom had shrugged, uncomfortable. "Boss comes and goes, doesn't explain himself to anyone." Now, on the 3rd day, Nora knelt in the abandoned vegetable garden behind the main house. Whoever had planted it had given up long ago. The fence was broken in places, weeds choking what might have once been neat rows of vegetables. But she could see the bones of something good here, the potential waiting beneath the neglect. She'd found tools in the shed and set to work. It was easier than thinking, easier than wondering why she was here, what Eli McKenna wanted with her. The repetitive motion of pulling weeds, the honest ache in her back, the dirt under her fingernails. These were things she understood. "Ma'am." She looked up to find a young ranch hand watching her from beyond the fence. He couldn't have been more than 17, with sandy hair and an earnest face. "Yes, I'm Jim Patterson. Tom sent me to ask if you need anything from town. We're making a supply run." Town, where people would talk, would whisper about the woman Eli McKenna had won at cards. She'd seen it in the ranch hands' faces, the speculation, the judgment. "No, thank you," she said, turning back to her weeding. But Jim didn't leave. That's real nice. What you're doing with the garden. My ma used to keep one. Said there's nothing like fresh vegetables." Despite herself, Nora felt a small warmth at the boy's kindness. "Your mother was right. She passed 2 winters ago. Fever. I'm sorry." Jim shifted his weight, clearly wanting to say more, but unsure how. "Finally," he blurted out. "Folks in town are talking about you, about how Mr. McKenna, how you came to be here." Nora's hands stilled on the weeds. "And what are they saying?" "Nothing worth repeating, ma'am, but Tom. He said to tell you that any of the hands give you trouble. You let him know. Mr. McKenna might be—" He paused, searching for words. "Well, he's particular about how things run on his ranch. And you're under his protection now." Protection. As if she were property to be guarded, which she supposed bitterly. She was— "Thank you, Jim," she said quietly. "Tell Tom I appreciate it." After the boy left, Nora worked until the sun was high and her dress was soaked with sweat. The garden was beginning to show its shape again. She'd cleared a quarter of it, revealing rich soil beneath the weeds. Tomorrow she'd start on the fence. She was washing at the pump when she heard the horses approaching. Multiple riders, their voices carrying on the wind. Not Eli. She'd have recognized the sound of his roan by now. 3 women rode up to the main house, dressed in the respectable dark colors of town matrons. Nora recognized the type. Pillars of the community, arbiters of morality, defenders of proper society. She'd faced their kind before, in another life. She stood by the pump, water still dripping from her hands. As they dismounted, the leader was a thin woman with sharp features and pale eyes that took in Nora's dirt-stained dress and disheveled appearance with obvious distaste. "You must be the woman," she said without preamble. "I'm Nora Garrett." She used her married name deliberately, a small shield against whatever was coming. "I'm Mrs. Constance Fairfield. This is Mrs. Dorothy Sherman and Mrs. Margaret Bowman. We're from the Cedar Falls Ladies' Moral Society. Of course they were. Nora had known their visit was inevitable. Proper women couldn't let such a scandal go unaddressed. How can I help you, ladies? Mrs. Fairfield's nostrils flared slightly, as if she smelled something unpleasant. We've come to discuss your situation. It's causing quite a stir in town. My situation? Living here, unmarried, with Mr. McKenna. Surely you can see how inappropriate it is. Nora almost laughed. Inappropriate. As if she'd chosen any of this. Mr. McKenna isn't here, she said instead. Hasn't been for 3 days. The women exchanged glances. Mrs. Sherman, a plump woman with kind eyes, looked almost sympathetic. Dear, that might be for the best. Perhaps you could move on. We could help arrange transportation to Denver. A fresh start. You want me to leave. We want what's best for everyone. Mrs. Fairfield said smoothly. Mr. McKenna is an important man in this county. His reputation matters, and frankly, your presence here damages that reputation. Does Mr. McKenna know about your concern for his reputation? Mrs. Fairfield's eyes narrowed. Mr. McKenna is a man, with a man's weaknesses. Sometimes it falls to proper women to guide them back to righteousness. This time Nora did laugh, a short, bitter sound. Righteousness, is that what you call it? Now see here, Mrs. Fairfield began, but Nora cut her off. I was brought here against my will. Ladies, one in a card game like a horse or a handful of coins. If you want to discuss morality, perhaps you should start with a society that allows such things. How dare you? Mrs. Garrett is right. The deep voice came from behind them. Tom Wheeler approached, hat in hand but steel in his eyes. Ladies, he continued, with all due respect, you're on Double M property without invitation. Mr. McKenna left clear instructions. Mrs. Garrett is to be treated with respect and left in peace. Mrs. Fairfield drew herself up. We're only trying to help. Then help by leaving. Tom's tone was polite but firm. I'll escort you to your horses. The women left in a flutter of indignation and whispered conversations. Mrs. Sherman glanced back once, and Nora thought she saw genuine sympathy in her expression. When they were gone, Tom turned to Nora. They'll be back, or others like them. Town's got nothing better to do than gossip. I can handle it. Tom studied her for a moment. I reckon you can. That garden's looking good. By the way, about time someone took it in hand. That night, Nora sat in her small house listening to the rain that had rolled in at sunset. The drops hammered on the roof, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled across the plains. She'd eaten alone, a simple meal of beans and cornbread from Chen Li's kitchen. Through her window, she could see the main house, still empty, still dark. Where was he? What kind of man won a woman at cards and then disappeared? She thought of the ladies' visit, their offer of escape to Denver. She could go, take what little she had and disappear into a city where no one knew her shame. Start over again, as she had before. But something held her here. Stubbornness, maybe, or curiosity about the man who'd looked at her with those cold gray eyes and seen what? Not desire, she'd have recognized that. Something else, something she couldn't name. The rain intensified, and through it, she heard hoofbeats. A single rider, approaching fast. Her heart jumped, stupid, treacherous thing, and she moved to the window. It was him. Even through the rain and darkness, she recognized the set of his shoulders, the way he sat his horse. He rode past her little house without slowing, heading for the stables. Nora watched until he disappeared into the barn, then returned to her chair. He was back, but nothing had changed. She was still a prize won at cards, still a scandal waiting to happen, still a woman with nowhere else to go. The rain continued through the night, and she sat listening to it, wondering what tomorrow would bring. In the main house, a light finally appeared in one window. Eli McKenna was home, but the distance between them remained as vast as the prairie itself. The stranger arrived on a Tuesday morning, riding a painted mare with easy confidence. Nora was hanging laundry when she saw him approach, his hat tilted at a rakish angle, a smile already forming as he spotted her. "Well, hello there," he called out, swinging down from his saddle with practiced ease. "Don't believe we've met. Name's Daniel Boone, and yes, ma'am, I've heard all the jokes." Despite herself, Nora found her lips twitching toward a smile. It had been 2 weeks since the lady's visit, 2 weeks of careful distance between her and Eli. This stranger's easy manner was like sunshine after a long storm. "Nora Garrett," she said, continuing to pin up a shirt. "Garrett?" Boone's eyebrows rose. "Thought you might be the new Mrs. McKenna. Way the boys in town are talking." "No." The word came out sharper than intended. "I'm not Mrs. McKenna. My mistake." But his smile didn't fade. If anything, it grew warmer. "I'm here to see Eli about some horses. We go way back, fought together in the war. He around?" "At the main house, I believe." Boone didn't move toward the house. Instead, he leaned against the fence, watching her work. "Known Eli for 10 years. Never seen him let anyone touch this garden. His mother's, wasn't it?" Nora's hand stilled. "His mother's. Died when he was young. 15, I think. He told me once, deep in a bottle, that she used to grow the best tomatoes in the territory." Boone gestured at the now neat rows of vegetables. "Looks like you've brought it back to life. I needed something to do. And Eli let you?" Boone shook his head in wonder. That's something. Man guards this place like it's sacred ground." Before Nora could respond, another voice cut through the morning air. Cold, sharp as winter wind. "Boone." Eli stood 20 feet away, his face carved from granite. His eyes moved between them, taking in Boone's relaxed posture, Nora's proximity, the easy conversation. Something dangerous flickered in his expression. "Eli." Boone straightened, but his smile remained. "Was just introducing myself to Mrs. Garrett here. Lovely woman. You always did have good luck at cards." The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Eli moved closer, each step deliberate, controlled. "The horses are in the north pasture," he said. "Tom will show you." "Now, Eli, I just got here. Surely we can—" "Tom will show you." The words were bullets. "Now." Boone's smile finally faltered. He looked between them, understanding dawning. "I see. Well then." He touched his hat to Nora. "Pleasure meeting you, ma'am." After Boone left, the silence stretched taut between them. Nora returned to her laundry, acutely aware of Eli's presence, the weight of his stare. "He seems nice," she said finally, not looking at him. "Stay away from him." The command ignited something in her chest, anger, hot and welcome after weeks of confusion. "I was hanging laundry. He approached me. Then next time, walk away. Like you did for 3 days. The words escaped before she could stop them. Eli's jaw tightened. "What I do is my business, and who I talk to is mine. No." He stepped closer, and she could smell leather and horse and something uniquely him. "You're under my protection. That means I'm your property." She faced him fully now, chin raised. "Like your horses, your cattle. That means men like Boone will see you as available, as fair game. And whose fault is that? Who made me a fallen woman in their eyes?" Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the ice. For a moment, she thought she saw regret. Then it was gone, replaced by that familiar coldness. "You think I wanted this?" His voice was low, rough. "Think I wanted some woman cluttering up my life?" The words hit like physical blows. Nora felt tears threaten. No, she wouldn't give him that satisfaction. She'd cried enough tears for one lifetime. "Then let me go," she said quietly. "The ladies from town offered to help me get to Denver. I could—" "No." "Why?" The word came out as a plea. "You don't want me here. You've made that clear. So why—" "Because I don't lose." The words were harsh, final. "Not at cards, not at business, not at anything. You're here because I won you, and what's mine stays mine." Nora felt something break inside her. Hope, maybe, or the last vestige of pride. Without another word, she gathered her laundry basket and walked away, leaving him standing among the fluttering sheets. That night, she cried for the first time since arriving at the Double M. Silent tears that she muffled in her thin pillow, mourning not just her current situation but all the losses that had brought her here. Her first husband, dead of fever 3 years ago. The baby that hadn't lived past its first breath. The desperate choice to marry Sam Garrett, thinking anything would be better than starving. She'd been wrong about that, and wrong to hope that Eli McKenna might be different. A soft sound outside made her freeze. Footsteps on the porch, then nothing. She waited, heard retreating steps, the main house door closing in the distance. Curious, she crept to her door and opened it. On the step was a piece of paper, weighted down with a small rock. She brought it inside, lit her lamp, and read the masculine scrawl. I spoke harshly. That was wrong of me. E.M. Not an apology, exactly, but for a man like Eli McKenna, perhaps it was close as he could come. She folded the paper carefully, placed it in her Bible. It changed nothing. Really, she was still trapped, still unwanted, still a possession won at cards. But it was something. A crack in the wall between them, tiny as it might be. Over the following days, something shifted. Eli didn't disappear again, but he didn't seek her out either. Yet she felt his presence, watching from the main house window as she worked the garden, passing by the stable when she was brushing down the gentle mare he designated as hers. And there were small things. New work gloves appearing on her porch, the broken fence around the garden mysteriously repaired overnight, a basket of flower seeds from town with no note. But she knew. One afternoon, she was struggling with a particularly stubborn fence post when his shadow fell over her. You're doing it wrong, he said. She straightened, wiping sweat from her brow. Then show me the right way. He hesitated, and she thought he might walk away. Then he stepped forward, took the post digger from her hands. Like this, use your weight, not just your arms. For the next hour, they worked together in relative silence. He showed her how to set posts properly, how to string wire tight. Their hands brushed once as they both reached for the hammer, and he jerked back as if burned. Why gardens? He asked suddenly as they worked. Why not just leave it be? Nora considered her answer. Growing things. It's hope, I suppose. Plant a seed, tend it, believe something good will come, even when everything else is falling apart. He was quiet for a long moment. My mother used to say something similar. Tell me about her. Nothing to tell. But he continued working beside her, and after a while, he said, she was strong. Had to be, out here. Papa was gone a lot, building the ranch. She held everything together, taught me letters, numbers, right from wrong. She sounds wonderful. She was. His hand stilled on the wire. Fever took her. I was 15. Papa fell apart after that. Drunk himself to death within 2 years. I'm sorry, he shrugged. The wall's going back up. Long time ago. They finished the fence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple as they put away the tools. Nora gathered her courage. Eli? He turned, waiting. That man, Boone, I wouldn't. I know. The admission seemed to surprise him as much as her. Boone's a good man, one of the few I trust. It wasn't about him. Then what? He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something raw in his eyes, quickly hidden. You smiled, he said quietly. First time I've seen you smile since you've been here. Before she could respond, he was walking away, his long strides eating up the distance to the main house. Nora stood in the gathering dusk, one hand pressed to her chest where her heart was doing something complicated and dangerous. She'd smiled at another man, and it had mattered to him. Eli McKenna, who claimed to want nothing but possession, had cared that she smiled. It wasn't much. It might be nothing. But for the first time since that night at the saloon, Nora felt a flutter of something that might have been hope. The first dinner invitation came on a Thursday evening, delivered by Tom Wheeler with barely concealed surprise. "Boss says you're to take supper at the main house tonight," Tom said. "Hat in hand. 7 o'clock. Nora looked up from the bread she was kneading. She'd taken to baking in the main house kitchen, with Chen Li's amused permission. "Did he say why?" "Boss doesn't explain himself. Just said to tell you." After Tom left, Nora stared at the dough beneath her hands. 3 weeks had passed since the fence incident. 3 weeks of careful distance punctuated by moments of unexpected proximity. Eli watching her train the new foal, her bringing him coffee during a long night with a sick cow. Small intersections of their separate lives that left her unsettled. At 7 precisely, she knocked on the main house door. Eli answered himself, dressed in a clean white shirt and dark trousers. Without his usual work clothes, he looked younger, less forbidding. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. The dining room was simply furnished but clean. The table set for 2 with good china she suspected hadn't been used in years. Candles provided warm light, casting shadows that softened the room's hard edges. "Chen Li made beef stew," Eli said, gesturing to her chair. "Hope that suits." "It's fine." She sat carefully, aware of her worn dress, her work-roughened hands. "Why am I here?" He took his seat across from her. "Man gets tired of eating alone. You've been eating alone for years, from what I gather." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Maybe I'm getting soft in my old age." "You're not old. 36 next month. That's old for this life." They ate in silence for a few minutes. The only sounds the clink of silverware and the wind rattling the windows. Then, surprising them both, they began to talk. Safe topics at first: the ranch, the horses, the garden's progress. But as the meal progressed and Eli poured wine from a dusty bottle, the conversation deepened. "Why cattle?" Nora asked. "You could have done anything after the war." Eli considered the question. "Cattle don't lie, don't scheme or betray. You treat them right. They give you what you need. Simple, honest, lonely." She added softly. He met her eyes. "That too." After dinner, he showed her the rest of the house. It was bigger than she'd realized. Room after empty room gathering dust. 6 bedrooms, he said, opening another door. Papa had big dreams. Wanted to fill this place with grandchildren. "And you? Do you want children?" The question hung between them. Too intimate, too revealing. Eli's jaw tightened. Never saw the point, bringing children into this hard world, teaching them to hope just to watch life crush it out of them. That's a dark view. That's an honest view. He moved past her, closing the door. "I've seen what hope does to people. Better to expect nothing." They ended the tour in his study, a masculine room filled with ledgers and maps. But what caught Nora's attention was the painting above the fireplace, a woman with gentle eyes and Eli's strong jawline. Your mother. Yes, she was beautiful. She was. He poured whiskey from a decanter, offered her a glass. She shook her head. Beautiful and foolish. Believed my father would change, would become the man she needed. Died still believing it. Maybe that's not foolishness, Nora said quietly. Maybe that's love. Eli turned to look at her, and something shifted in the air between them. The room felt smaller suddenly, the space between them charged with possibility. You should go, he said roughly. It's getting late. But he moved closer instead of away, drawn by something stronger than sense. Nora's breath caught as he reached out, his fingers barely grazing her cheek. Your husband, he said. Did you love him? Which one? The bitter words slipped out before she could stop them. His hand dropped. How many times have you been married? Twice. First one died of fever. Sam Garrett was necessity. And before that? She turned away. Does it matter? No? But his voice said otherwise. Nothing before matters. The lie hung between them, obvious and painful. Everything before mattered. Every choice, every scar, every compromise that had brought them to this moment. I should go, She echoed his earlier words. This time, he didn't stop her. The next evening, another invitation. And the next. It became a routine. Dinner at 7. Conversation that danced around dangerous topics. Moments of connection followed by hasty retreats. The cold dining room began to warm with laughter, with shared stories, with the careful building of something neither dared name. On the 7th night, disaster came in the form of burned bread and scorched stew. "Chenli's sick," Eli explained as they surveyed the ruined meal. "I tried to cook, despite everything." Nora laughed. "You tried to cook. The man who can break a horse and build an empire can't manage simple stew." "Never had to learn," he said, but he was almost smiling. "Always had someone else to do it." "Move over." She rolled up her sleeves. "Let's see what we can salvage." They worked together in the kitchen, Nora directing, Eli following orders with amused grace. She taught him to dice onions properly, to brown meat before stewing, to taste and adjust seasonings. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same spoon. She showed him how to knead bread, standing behind him, her hands guiding his. "Like this," she said, pressing his palms into the dough. "Feel the texture change." He turned his head slightly, and suddenly their faces were inches apart, his breath warm on her cheek, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Nora," he said, her name a question. She should have stepped back, should have remembered all the reasons this was impossible. Instead, she stayed frozen as he turned fully, his flour-dusted hands coming up to frame her face. The kiss was nothing like she expected, not harsh or demanding, but questioning, almost hesitant, as if he, too, was unsure of this new territory. She made a soft sound, surrender or protest. She wasn't sure, and his arms came around her, pulling her closer, when they finally broke apart. Both breathing hard. The kitchen seemed to spin around them. Eli started, then stopped. "God, Nora, I don't know what I'm doing." "Neither do I." Her voice was barely a whisper. He pressed his forehead to hers, eyes closed. "I'm no good for you, no good for anyone. Let me decide that. You don't understand. The things I've done, the man I am." She silenced him with another kiss, softer this time. "I understand enough. You're a hard man in a hard land. You've built walls so high you've forgotten there's a world outside them. But you're not cruel, Eli, not really. How can you know that? Because cruel men don't leave apology notes. They don't teach women to mend fences or share stories about their mothers. They don't kiss like they're afraid of breaking something precious." He pulled back to study her face, his gray eyes searching. "What do you want from me, Nora?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe just to feel alive again, to remember what it's like to want something instead of just surviving." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Stay tonight." The words hung between them, heavy with promise and possibility. "Eli, not for... just stay. The house is too quiet, always too quiet." Against her better judgment, she nodded. Later, they sat before the fire in his study, sharing the salvaged meal and a bottle of wine. The conversation flowed easier now, the kiss having broken some barrier between them. He told her about the war, about friends lost and innocence shattered. She spoke of her first husband, the baby that died, the desperate choices that followed. "We're a pair, aren't we?" Eli said as the fire burned low. "Two damaged souls trying to make sense of things." "Maybe that's enough," Nora replied. "Maybe damaged souls understand each other better." When she finally rose to leave, propriety demanding she return to her own house, Eli caught her hand. "Tomorrow?" he asked. "Tomorrow," she agreed. Walking back through the cool night air, Nora touched her lips, still feeling the warmth of his kiss. Everything had changed tonight, the careful distance, the safe boundaries, all shattered by flour-dusted hands and shared confessions. She thought of the town's whispers, of the scandal that would surely follow if anyone knew. She thought of her reputation, already tattered beyond repair, and found she didn't care. For the first time in years, She wanted something more than mere survival. She wanted the complicated, difficult, possibly doomed thing building between her and Eli McKenna. It might destroy them both. But tonight, with the taste of him still on her lips and the memory of his arms around her, Nora thought it might just be worth the risk. The weeks that followed were a careful dance of stolen moments and growing intimacy. By day, they maintained the pretense of distance, Eli overseeing the ranch, Nora tending her garden and helping Chen Li, who had taken a shine to her. But in the evenings, the main house became their sanctuary. They shared meals and stories, books and silences. Eli taught her to play chess. She taught him to waltz to the music from his mother's old music box. Some nights they simply sat by the fire, reading in companionable quiet, the space between them charged with unspoken promises. The first night they shared more than kisses came after a violent thunderstorm. Lightning had spooked the horses, and Eli had spent hours in the rain calming them. He returned to the house soaked and shivering, exhaustion written in every line of his body. Nora was waiting with hot coffee and dry clothes. As she helped him out of his wet shirt, her hands stilled on his bare chest, tracing an old scar. "Shrapnel," he said quietly. "Gettysburg." She pressed her lips to the mark, felt him shudder. What happened next was inevitable as sunrise, two lonely souls finding solace in each other's arms. Afterward, they lay entwined in his bed, listening to the rain against the windows. "I'm no good at this," Eli whispered into the darkness. "Being with someone, trusting, neither am I," Nora admitted. "But maybe we can learn together." Those were the golden days, when hope seemed possible and the outside world felt far away. But Eden never lasts. The stranger arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, riding a tired horse and wearing clothes that had seen better days. Nora was picking tomatoes when she heard the commotion, raised voices from the main house. "Eli's among them." She hurried toward the sound, basket forgotten. Through the window, she could see them in the study, Eli facing down a man she recognized with sickening clarity. Lester Holbrook, a ghost from her past, wearing the same oily smile that had haunted her nightmares. "Told you, she's my property," Lester was saying. "Got the papers right here." "She's not anyone's property." Eli's voice was deadly quiet. "And you're trespassing." Now, Mr. McKenna, no need for unpleasantness. I heard tell you won my Nora in a card game. Figure one businessman to another. We can work something out. She's not your Nora. That's where you're wrong." Lester pulled out a folded document. "Marriage certificate, dated 3 years back. Course, that was before she run off. Left me high and dry. Been looking for her ever since." Nora's knees went weak. She gripped the window frame, watching Eli's face as he read the paper. His expression never changed, but she saw his knuckles whiten where he gripped the document. "This says Mary Holbrook," Eli said finally. "That's right, Mary Nora Holbrook. Guess she didn't tell you about her real name, or her real husband." Lester's smile widened. "Wonder what else she didn't tell you. Like how she used to work at Miss Sophie's establishment in Kansas City, real popular with the gentlemen. From what I heard." The words hit like physical blows. Nora pressed a hand to her mouth, bile rising in her throat. Not here, not now, not when she'd finally found something good. "Get out," Eli said, his voice flat. "Now hold on. Get out before I kill you." Something in Eli's tone must have penetrated Lester's confidence. He backed toward the door, but his smile remained. "I'll be in town," he said. "When you're done with my wife, you know where to find me. We can discuss compensation for my troubles." After Lester left, Nora watched Eli stand perfectly still for a long moment. Then he swept everything off his desk with one violent motion. Papers, inkwell, ledgers crashing to the floor. She should run, pack her few belongings and disappear before he could confront her. But her feet wouldn't move. The front door opened. Eli stood there, his face carved from stone. "Mary," he said, the name like a curse. "I can explain. Can you?" Can you explain why you lied? Why you let me—" He broke off, jaw working. "Get inside." She followed him to the study, stepping carefully around the scattered papers. He poured whiskey, drank it in one swallow, poured another. "Is it true?" he asked without looking at her. "Which part?" "Don't." He turned then, and the pain in his eyes made her step back. "Don't play games. Not now." Nora sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. "My name is Mary Nora. I've gone by Nora since I left Lester. And the rest—" She closed her eyes. "After my first husband died, I was desperate. No family, no money, a baby that needed food and medicine. I did what I had to do. You worked in a brothel. For 6 months. Until the baby died. Then I couldn't stand it anymore. That's when Lester found me. Said he'd marry me. Give me respectability again. I was fool enough to believe him. But you were married to him. If you can call it marriage." Her voice turned bitter. "He waited exactly 1 day after the ceremony to tell me I'd be working again. Said a woman like me was only good for one thing. When I refused." She touched her ribs unconsciously, remembering old bruises. "You ran. To another town, another name. Met Sam Garrett. Thought maybe a drinking problem was better than Lester. And you know how that ended." Silence stretched between them, heavy with broken trust and painful truths. "Were you ever going to tell me?" Eli asked finally. "How? How do you tell someone that?" Tears ran down her face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wanted to be Nora with you. Just Nora. Not Mary the whore. Not someone's property. Just a woman trying to grow tomatoes and learn to live again." Eli set down his glass carefully. When he looked at her, his expression was unreadable. "I need time to think," he said. "Go back to your house. Eli, please. Go!" The walk to her little house felt endless. Inside, Nora mechanically packed her few possessions. She'd leave tonight. Spare him the difficulty of throwing her out. She'd survived starting over before. She could do it again. But God, it hurt. Hurt worse than Lester's fists. Worse than the baby's death. Worse than all the humiliations that had come before. Because with Eli, she'd remembered what it felt like to be cherished, to be seen as more than her mistakes. She was folding her spare dress when she heard footsteps on the porch. Her heart leaped, then sank. Probably Tom, sent to make sure she left quietly. But it was Eli who stood in her doorway, hat in hand. "Where are you going?" he asked, seeing her packed bag. "Away. It's better for everyone." "Is it?" He stepped inside. "Better for who? For me? For you? Or for men like Lester who think they own you? You don't understand. I understand plenty." His voice was rough. "I understand you survived things that would break most people. I understand you did what you had to do to live. I understand that bastard out there thinks he can waltz in here and take you back to that life. The law. To hell with the law." He moved closer, his eyes fierce. "You're not his wife. You're mine." The words hung between them, possession and promise tangled together. "Eli," she whispered. "I don't care," he said fiercely. "About Kansas City, about the brothel, about any of it. I care that you're here, that you brought my mother's garden back to life, that you make me want things I thought I'd never want again. The whole town will know. Your reputation. My reputation can go to hell too." He cupped her face in his hands. "Stay, please, stay with me." She broke then, sobbing against his chest as he held her. They stood that way for a long time, clinging to each other as shadows lengthened outside. "What about Lester?" she asked finally. "Let me handle Lester." There was something dangerous in his voice. "He won't bother you again." That night, Eli insisted she move into the main house. "No more pretending," he said. "You belong here. With me." As she lay in his bed, his arms around her, Nora felt the fragile hope she'd been nurturing crack and reform into something stronger. The truth was out, ugly and painful, but they'd survived it. Outside, a coyote howled at the rising moon, but inside, wrapped in warmth and unexpected grace, 2 damaged souls held tight to their imperfect salvation. The morning after Lester's visit, Nora woke alone. Eli's side of the bed was cold, and through the window she could see him in the corral, working a young stallion with a single-minded intensity. She dressed quickly and went to the kitchen, where Chen Li was preparing breakfast. "Mr. Eli leave very early," the cook said, not meeting her eyes. "Say he have business in town." Town, where Lester waited like a spider in his web. "Chen Li," she said quietly. "You've heard?" The older man's face softened. "I hear enough. You good woman, Miss Nora. Past is past. Mr. Eli. He know this. But did he?" The fury in his movements last night, the careful way he'd held her, as if she might break, or as if he might, suggested otherwise. She spent the morning in restless activity, trying to lose herself in ordinary tasks. But her hands shook as she kneaded bread, and she jumped at every sound, expecting Lester or the sheriff or worse. It was near noon when Tom Wheeler found her in the garden. "Ma'am," he said, hat in hand. "Boss sent me to check on you, said to tell you everything's handled." "Handled?" Her voice came out sharp. "What does that mean?" Tom shifted uncomfortably. "That Holbrook fellow won't be troubling you anymore. He's decided to move on." "Tom, what did Eli do?" "Nothing that wasn't deserved, I reckon." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "Boss takes care of his own." After Tom left, Nora sank onto the garden bench, mind racing. Eli's temper, carefully controlled but volcanic when unleashed. Lester's greed and cowardice. The isolation of the frontier, where law was often what men made it. She was still sitting there when hoofbeats announced Eli's return. He dismounted slowly, and she saw the bruised knuckles, the torn shirt collar. "Is he dead?" she asked without preamble. "No." Eli flexed his injured hand. "Though he might wish he was. He's on a stage to California with strong encouragement not to return." "Eli." "He won't bother you again." His voice was flat, final. "Neither will anyone else who thinks they have a claim on you. You can't fight the whole world for me. Watch me." The fierce protectiveness in his voice should have warmed her. Instead, it sent a chill down her spine. This was how it started. Violence begetting violence. Blood calling for blood. "I won't be the reason you become someone you're not," she said. Too late for that. He finally looked at her, and she saw the storm in his gray eyes. "I became someone different the moment you walked into my life." That evening, the temperature between them was strange, passionate and distant by turns. They made love with desperate intensity, as if trying to bridge the gap that Lester's appearance had torn between them. But afterward, Eli lay silent, staring at the ceiling. "Talk to me," Nora pleaded. "What's there to say? You lied, I reacted. He's gone. We move on. It's not that simple." "Isn't it?" He turned to face her. "What do you want me to say, Nora? That it doesn't matter? That finding out the woman He stopped, jaw clenching. "The woman you what?" "The woman I've let into my life has a past she hid from me. That there's a legal husband out there who could come back any time. He won't. You made sure of that. This time. What about the next? What other surprises are waiting?" The words cut deep. Nora pulled the sheet around herself, suddenly cold. "None," she said quietly. "You know everything now. Every shameful secret. Every bad choice. If that's too much for you, don't." He pulled her back when she tried to leave the bed. "Don't run. That's all you've done, isn't it? Run from one disaster to the next. What else was I supposed to do? Stand and fight? With what? I had nothing. No one. You have me now. Do I?" The question hung between them. "Because right now, it feels like you can barely stand to look at me." Eli was quiet for a long moment. "Then, when I was 20, right after the war, I fell in love. Her name was Catherine, banker's daughter. Pretty as a picture. We were engaged." Nora went still. He'd never spoken of this before. "Week before the wedding, I found her with another man, my best friend. They'd been carrying on for months, laughing at the foolish cowboy who thought he could marry quality." "Eli, I nearly killed them both. Would've, if her father hadn't had me arrested." Spent 3 months in jail. Lost everything I'd built. When I got out, I swore I'd never let anyone that close again. And then I came along. And then you came along. His hand found hers under the sheets. Broke every rule I'd made me feel things I'd buried. And now I find out you've been lying too. Not lying, just not telling. There's a difference. Is there? They lay in silence, hands clasped but hearts still distant. Over the next days, they moved carefully around each other, polite at meals, gentle in bed, but the easy intimacy was gone. Nora threw herself into preparations for winter, canning vegetables, helping with the fall roundup, anything to avoid the growing distance. One evening, she found Eli in his study, staring at the marriage certificate Lester had left behind. "Burning it won't change anything," she said from the doorway. "I know." He set it aside. "I've been thinking." Her heart sank. This was it. He'd decided she had to go. "There's a judge in Denver," he continued. "Owns me some favors. He could look into the legality of this marriage. Find grounds for annulment? You'd do that? If you want." He looked up at her. "Do you want to be free of it? Free of him?" "Yes." The word came out fierce. "I was never really his wife, not in any way that mattered." "Then we'll make it official. Legal." He paused. "And then maybe you'd consider becoming mine. Legally, properly." The words came out rushed, awkward. "If you want." Nora stared at him. Are you proposing?" "I'm making a mess of it." He stood, crossing to her. "I'm not good with words, Nora, but I know I don't want to wake up without you. Don't want to run this ranch, this life, alone anymore. Even knowing what you know? Because of what I know." His hands framed her face. "You're a survivor, a fighter. You've been broken and got back up. That's the kind of woman I need, the kind I want. Eli, I'm not Catherine," he said roughly. "I won't promise pretty words or an easy life, but I'll protect you, provide for you, be faithful to you, build something real with you." Tears ran down her face. Yes, I'll go to Denver. Yes, I'll end my marriage to Lester. And yes, I'll marry you. If you're sure." He silenced her with a kiss, fierce and claiming. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she saw the walls in his eyes finally crumble. "I'm sure," he said. "More sure than I've been of anything since you smiled at me over a hand of cards." They made love slowly that night, rediscovering each other with new tenderness. The secrets were out, the past acknowledged. Now there was only the future, uncertain, but theirs to build. Later, as dawn painted the sky pink, Nora woke to find Eli watching her. "Regrets?" she asked. "None." He traced her face with one finger. "You? Only that it took so long to find you. We're a pair of fools," he said, but he was almost smiling. "Broken, stubborn fools. But we're each other's fools now. That we are, Mrs. Soon-to-be McKenna. That we are." Outside, a rooster crowed, announcing the new day. Inside, two wounded hearts finally began to heal, held together by something stronger than law or paper. The choice to trust, to stay, to build something lasting in a hard and lonely land. The ghost of Mary Holbrook was fading. In her place stood Nora, chosen and choosing, ready to face whatever came next with the difficult, damaged, wonderful man who'd won her at cards and lost his heart in return. The journey to Denver took 3 days through harsh November weather. Eli had arranged everything with his typical efficiency. A comfortable wagon, warm blankets, stops at reputable establishments. But Nora could feel his tension in the set of his shoulders, the way his hand never strayed far from his rifle. They barely spoke during the journey, each lost in private thoughts. The meeting with Judge Harrison was set for Thursday. After that, if all went well, she would be free. Denver was larger than Nora expected, bustling with the energy of a city racing toward the new century. Their hotel was respectable but modest. Eli had no patience for ostentation. That first night, lying in the unfamiliar bed, Nora reached for his hand. What if the judge says no? He won't. Eli's voice was certain. Harrison owes me. His son got into trouble a few years back, cattle rustling. I spoke for the boy. Got him probation instead of prison. And if Lester fights it, Lester's halfway to California by now, counting the money I gave him to disappear. You paid him? She sat up, shocked. Eli, you shouldn't have. It was worth it. He pulled her back down. Every penny, to know he'll never darken our door again. The next morning brought an unexpected complication. As they entered the courthouse, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows. Mrs. Constance Fairfield, the moral crusader from Cedar Falls. Mr. McKenna, she said, her sharp face pinched with disapproval. I heard you were in town. With her, Mrs. Fairfield. Eli's tone was glacial. What brings you to Denver? Christian duty. When I learned of your situation, I felt compelled to act. Judge Harrison should know the full character of the woman he's being asked to help. Nora felt ice in her veins. You told him. Everything. Mrs. Fairfield's smile was vicious. About your past profession, your multiple marriages, the scandal you've brought to our community? The judge was most interested. Eli stepped forward, and for a moment, Nora thought he might strike the woman. You, vindictive. The truth will out. Mr. McKenna. Mrs. Fairfield interrupted. Perhaps now you'll see the wisdom of choosing a proper wife. My own niece is visiting next month. Lovely girl. Unspoiled. Come on. Eli took Nora's arm, steering her past the smirking woman. She's not worth it. Judge Harrison's chambers were richly appointed, all leather and dark wood. The judge himself was younger than Nora expected, with shrewd eyes that missed nothing. The documents were already spread on his desk. Mr. McKenna, Harrison began without preamble. I've reviewed the case, and I've had an interesting morning. Your Honor, Eli started, but Harrison held up a hand. Let me finish. Mrs. Fairfield was quite thorough in her revelations. She painted quite a picture of Mrs. Garrett here. Nora's hands clenched in her lap. It was over. The judge would refuse. She'd remain legally bound to Lester and Eli. Fortunately, Harrison continued, I've known Constance Fairfield for years. Bitter woman, especially since her own husband ran off with a dance hall girl. He smiled slightly. I tend to take her moral proclamations with a grain of salt. Then you'll grant the annulment? Eli asked. On what grounds? Mrs. Fairfield's gossip aside, I need legal justification. Fraud, Nora said quietly. Both men turned to her. Lester married me under false pretenses. He promised a home, respectability, protection. Instead, he tried to force me back into a life I'd left behind. When I refused, he beat me. I have witnesses. Who? Dr. Samuel Morrison in Kansas City. He treated my injuries. And Mrs. Ruth Patterson, my neighbor. She helped me escape. Harrison made notes. I'll need to verify these claims. It could take weeks. We'll wait, Eli said firmly. There's another option. The judge leaned back. Abandonment. If Mr. Holbrook has indeed left for California, and we can prove he's established residence elsewhere, abandoned his marital obligations, that's grounds for dissolution? How long? 6 months, minimum. You'd need to stay in Denver, establish residency yourselves. Eli looked at Nora. 6 months in the city, away from the ranch, away from everything they'd built. But in her eyes, he saw determination. We'll do it, she said. They left the courthouse in silence, the weight of half a year stretching before them. On the steps, Mrs. Fairfield waited like a crow. Disappointed. Mr. McKenna. Perhaps now you'll see Mrs. Fairfield. Nora interrupted, her voice steady. You've had your say. You've done your worst. But you might want to remember that Mr. McKenna is not without influence in this territory, and neither am I. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you. Nora stepped closer. I know about the laudanum addiction you hide, the debts your husband left, the son you disowned for loving a Mexican girl. Glass houses, Mrs. Fairfield, be careful where you throw stones. The older woman went white. How dare you? The same way you dared. Now if you'll excuse us, we have a life to build. As they walked away, Eli looked at her with new respect. Laudanum addiction? Chenley's cousin works at the pharmacy. Amazing what people tell the help. She took his arm. I'm tired of being anyone's victim. Eli, yours, Lester's, or hers. You're nobody's victim. He said fiercely. Not anymore. They found a small house to rent on the outskirts of Denver. Close enough to satisfy the residency requirement, but far enough to avoid the worst of the city gossip. Eli traveled back and forth to the ranch while Nora established their Denver life, finding allies in unexpected places. The minister's wife who'd fled an abusive marriage herself, the lawyer's clerk who admired her courage, the seamstress who offered her work. Winter settled over the city, but their small house became a haven. On the nights Eli was there, they created their own world, planning for the future, healing old wounds. He told her about expanding the ranch, maybe raising horses as well as cattle. She spoke of children, of filling that big empty house with laughter. One evening in January, as snow fell softly outside, a knock interrupted their quiet dinner. Eli opened the door to find a young woman, heavily pregnant and shivering. Please, she said through chattering teeth. Are you Mrs. McKenna? They said you might help. I'm not Mrs. McKenna yet, Nora said, but she was already pulling the girl inside. But come in, you're freezing. The girl's story tumbled out, abandoned by her lover, thrown out by her family, desperate and alone. As Nora settled her by the fire with hot soup and gentle words, Eli watched with a strange expression. Later, after they'd arranged for the girl to stay with the minister's wife, Eli pulled Nora close. You didn't hesitate, he said, even knowing how people might talk. She needed help. That's all that mattered. You're going to turn our ranch into a refuge for every stray soul in the territory, aren't you? Would that be so bad? He kissed her forehead. No, it wouldn't be bad at all. February brought a letter from Judge Harrison. Lester Holbrook had been located in San Francisco, living under an assumed name with a new woman. The abandonment was clear. The papers would be ready within the month. Almost there, Eli said, holding the letter. Soon you'll be free. I'm already free. Nora replied. Have been since the night you let me stay. The final hearing was set for March 15th. As they prepared to face the judge one last time, Nora felt the chains of her past finally loosening. Mary Holbrook was about to legally cease to exist. In her place would stand Nora, not Garrett, not Holbrook, just Nora, ready to choose her own name, her own life, her own future. Nervous? Eli asked as they climbed the courthouse steps. No, she said, and meant it. I'm ready. For the hearing? For everything that comes after. He stopped, there on the steps with the spring wind whipping around them, and kissed her thoroughly, scandalizing passers-by and delighting her heart. That's my girl, he said against her lips. Let's go make you free. But she already was. Had been from the moment a cold-eyed rancher decided to honor a foolish bet, setting them both on the path to something neither had dared dream of. Redemption, partnership, and the kind of love that transforms everything it touches. The hearing was just paperwork. The real freedom had already been won, one difficult choice at a time, in the space between two stubborn hearts learning to trust. The spring of 1889 arrived at the Double M Ranch with unusual warmth, painting the plains in wild flowers and fresh grass. Nora, now legally free and properly married to Eli, in a quiet ceremony witnessed by Tom Wheeler and Chen Lee, stood in her flourishing garden, one hand resting on her swollen belly. The changes in the year since her arrival were remarkable. The main house, once cold and empty, now rang with life. She'd opened 2 of the unused bedrooms to women in need, a young widow with twin boys, an elderly seamstress whose hands could no longer support her. Eli had grumbled at first about his ranch becoming a boarding house for strays, but she'd caught him teaching the twins to rope and discussing cattle prices with the widow, who turned out to have a keen head for business. "You're going to work yourself into an early grave," Eli said, coming up behind her. His arms encircled her, hands gentle on her belly. "The doctor said rest." "The doctor doesn't have spring planting to finish," she replied, but leaned back into his warmth. "Besides, the exercise is good for the baby." "Stubborn woman." But his voice was fond. "Chen Li has lunch ready. Come eat." The dining room table that had once hosted silent, solitary meals now seated 8. The twins, Marcus and Matthew, chattered about the foal born that morning. Mrs. Eliza Hartwell, the widow, discussed the benefits of crossbreeding cattle with Tom Wheeler. Old Mrs. Donovan quietly mended a shirt, her presence a gentle blessing on the household. This was what Nora had dreamed of in those desperate years, not just survival, but community, family, chosen and cherished. After lunch, as the household dispersed to afternoon tasks, a rider approached. Nora recognized Daniel Boone's painted mare before she saw the man himself. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly, a protective gesture Eli noticed immediately. "I'll handle it," he said, but she shook her head. "He's your friend, and I'm not hiding anymore." Boone dismounted with his usual easy grace, but his expression was serious. "Eli, Mrs. McKenna." He touched his hat to Nora. "Congratulations on the marriage and the coming addition. What brings you out here, Dan?" Eli's tone was carefully neutral. "News from California. Thought you should hear it from a friend." Boone's eyes flicked to Nora. "Lester Holbrook is dead. Knife fight in a San Francisco saloon. Apparently, he tried to cheat the wrong man at cards." Nora felt nothing. No grief, no relief. Just a distant acknowledgement of an ending. That chapter of her life had closed months ago. "When?" Eli asked. 6 weeks passed. I just got word from a friend who recognized the name from our conversation last year." "Thank you for telling us," Nora said quietly. "Will you stay for supper?" Boone's face relaxed into his familiar smile. "If you'll have me. Been too long since I had a home-cooked meal." That evening, as Boone regaled the table with stories of his travels, Nora felt the last shadow of her past lift. Lester was gone, unable to return and claim what he'd never truly possessed. She was free in every sense now, legally, emotionally, spiritually. Later, as she and Eli prepared for bed, he seemed unusually quiet. "What's troubling you?" she asked, brushing out her hair. "I used to wish him dead," Eli admitted. "Dreamed of hunting him down, making him pay for what he'd done to you. Does that make me a bad man?" "It makes you human." She moved to where he sat on the bed, taking his face in her hands. "But you didn't hunt him down. You let the law and distance handle it. That makes you a good man. I'm not good. Nora, never have been. You're good to me, good to those boys, to Mrs. Hartwell, to everyone under your protection. That's all that matters." He pulled her close, mindful of her belly. "How did I survive so long without you?" "The same way I survived without you, badly." She kissed him softly. "But we don't have to anymore." The baby came on a storm-lashed night in May. Eli paced the hallway like a caged wolf while Dr. Morrison and Mrs. Hartwell attended Nora. Her cries echoed through the house, each one a knife to his heart. "First babies take time," Tom Wheeler said, pressing a glass of whiskey into Eli's hand. "My Sarah labored near 20 hours with our oldest." 20 hours? Eli drained the glass. "I'll go mad." But it was only 8 hours, though they felt like 8 years, before a new cry split the air. Dr. Morrison emerged, sleeves rolled up, wearing a tired smile. "Congratulations, Mr. McKenna. You have a son, healthy and loud as his mother is strong." Eli nearly knocked the man over getting to the bedroom. Nora lay propped against pillows, exhausted but radiant, a bundled form in her arms. "Come meet your son," she said softly. The baby was red-faced and wrinkled, with a shock of dark hair and unfocused eyes. Eli touched one tiny fist with a trembling finger, and the baby grasped it with surprising strength. "He's perfect," Eli breathed. What should we call him? I was thinking James, after your father. New life from old roots. James McKenna. Eli tested the name. Strong name, good name. A name for a boy who'll grow up free. Nora added, We'll never wonder if he's wanted, never doubt he's loved. As if in agreement, little James yawned and settled into sleep. The months that followed were a blur of feedings and diapers, first smiles and sleepless nights. The ranch adapted to its newest resident with remarkable ease. The twins appointed themselves big brothers, entertaining James while Nora worked Mrs. Donovan knitted endless tiny garments. Even the ranch hands seemed softer, quieter when the baby was around. One evening, as autumn painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Eli found Nora sitting under the big oak tree. James slept in her arms while she watched the sun set over their land. Penny for your thoughts, he said, settling beside them. I was remembering that night in the saloon, she said. How angry I was, how trapped. I thought my life was ending. And now I know it was beginning. She looked at him, love clear in her eyes. You won at cards that night, but I think I won more. How do you figure? You won a reluctant woman with a complicated past. I won a home, a family, a future I never dared dream of. She smiled. I definitely got the better deal. Debatable, Eli said, kissing her temple. I won the woman who'd teach me how to live instead of just survive, who'd fill my empty house with laughter and chaos, who'd give me this. He gestured at James, at the ranch spread before them, at the life they'd built together. We both won, Nora decided. Against all odds, despite everything, we both won. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they sat in comfortable silence, their son sleeping peacefully between them. The ranch settled into evening routines, cattle lowing, horses nickering, voices calling good night. This was what redemption looked like, not grand gestures or dramatic moments, but quiet evenings under ancient trees, surrounded by chosen family, holding tight to love that had grown from the rockiest of soil. Eli had once told her he didn't believe in hope, that it was better to expect nothing. But here, with his wife in his arms and his son dreaming milk-drunk dreams, hope seemed the only rational response to such unexpected grace. I love you, he said into the gathering darkness. Both of you, all of this. Thank you for not giving up on me. Never, Nora promised. We're McKennas. We don't give up. We just keep planting seeds and trusting something good will grow. And under the vast western sky, where anything could happen and sometimes did, a family born of chance and choice, pain and persistence, settled in for another night in their imperfect paradise. The gambling rancher had won more than a wife that fateful night. He'd won his salvation, and she'd won hers in return. Not bad for a hand of cards in a dusty saloon. Not bad at all. Thank you for listening to this story from the Wild West. I'm curious to know where you're tuning in from, whether you're listening while driving through the plains, relaxing at home, or perhaps even somewhere out in the wide open spaces that our characters called home. Please subscribe to Wild West Campfire and share your thoughts about Eli and Nora's journey. Did their story of redemption and second chances resonate with you? I'd love to hear your reflections in the comments below. Until our next campfire tale, partners.